May 2023. Bullets flew, people ran for their lives, and North High Street in Ohio turned into a war zone. Bodycam footage revealed the intense moments officers fought to regain control in what one called the most chaotic scene of his career. These are some of the most disturbing gang encounters caught on Bodycam. February 11, 2022, in the quiet early hours, Phoenix police responded to what seemed like a routine shooting call at a home near 51st Avenue and Broadway Road. By sunrise, however, the scene had turned into a nightmare. 9 officers injured, 2 lives lost, and a chilling reminder of how violence can erupt without warning. When officers arrived, 36-year-old Morris Richard Jones III, a known member of the Crips, met him at the door. Calmly, he claimed an intruder had shot his girlfriend and invited the first officer inside.
Come on! You're sucking our own blood. Come on, bro. Come on.
Who's all in the house?
Huh?
Who's all in the house?
It's me.
But it was a trap. Jones ambushed the officer, firing multiple shots and critically injuring him. Despite his wounds, the officer managed to retreat, and backup quickly surrounded the house as Jones barricaded himself inside. Then the tension escalated. A man stepped out of the house holding Jones's daughter with his ex-girlfriend, 29-year-old Shatifa Lobley. The man placed the girl on the ground and surrendered. But as officers rushed to save her, Jones opened fire again, wounding 4 more officers. Miraculously, the girl was unharmed. When police finally managed to enter the home, they found Lobley dead from gunshot wounds. Nearby lay Jones, who had taken his own life. Investigators later revealed his long history of violence, including multiple prison sentences for drugs and weapons charges. But this time he made it clear he wasn't going back. During the standoff, Jones called his sister, telling her he couldn't face another prison term. And right before ending his life, he also called his mother to say goodbye. And sadly, this next incident serves as yet another example of just how far someone will go to escape the consequences of their own choices.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
Shots fired.
Hands, let me see your hands!
May 7th, 2018 was a quiet Monday afternoon when officers Chris Bayerl and Sean Hickey patrolled near an extended stay-in on East 41st Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And what started as a routine check of a suspicious vehicle would turn into a deadly confrontation that no one could have predicted. The officers spotted 3 guys sitting in the parked car and decided to investigate. And as they approached, one detail immediately caught their attention: a gun in the hands of one of the men. They ordered him to surrender, but instead of complying, he opened fire. The officers had no choice but to respond.
What do you got?
Hey!
William 236, hold traffic, shots fired.
In the exchange, 36-year-old Albert Odom was fatally shot. Later, investigators revealed Odom had several felony warrants and a history tying him to gang activity, factors which likely influenced his decision to fight rather than surrender. For him as well, going back to jail wasn't an option, but the encounter was a grim reminder of how quickly a routine situation can turn deadly. Unfortunately, it's not the only one. It's April 16th, 2021. And Officer Tyler Savage pulls over a blue pickup truck on Penn Road in San Antonio, Texas. Inside were 2 guys and a woman. But what should have been a routine traffic stop quickly spiraled into a life-or-death struggle, leaving 2 suspects dead, the woman injured, and Savage narrowly escaping with his own life. As Savage approached the truck, he noticed the driver fidgeting nervously with his pockets. Remaining calm, he asked the driver to stop and place his keys where they could be seen. Then, when Savage detected the smell of marijuana, he asked the driver to step out of the vehicle. The driver refused to cooperate.
I'm sorry, yes, I did smoke. I did smoke earlier, but it's the smell on me. Okay, I'm being honest with you.
We'll figure that out.
Well, I'm being honest with you.
And unbeknownst to Savage, there was quite an exchange happening inside that truck. The front seat passenger leaned toward the back seat passenger and asked for a gun. Moments later, as Savage opened the driver's door, everything spiraled out of control. Gunfire rang out. Savage was struck in the hand, his radio damaged, blood dripping as he retreated to his patrol car. Despite the injury, though, he managed to reload and return fire, using his vehicle for cover. He also got bystanders to call for backup and tell him about the situation at hand.
Shots fired. Call the police! Call the police! Call the police! Call the police! My radio's down! Tell them my radio's down!
When the gunfire finally stopped, the two male suspects, Alex Garcia, 25, and Sammy Barbosa, 33, were dead. The female passenger was shot in the torso but survived and taken to the hospital. Savage, injured but alive, was also treated for his hand wound. April 23, 2021. In a similar incident, NYPD had pulled over a vehicle on Rockaway Parkway in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And again, what began as a routine traffic stop would spiral into chaos within seconds, leaving a lieutenant injured and sparking a city-wide manhunt for 32-year-old Takeem Newson, a reputed member of the Edgemere Crew gang. Now, bodycam footage shows officers asking Newson to step out of his car after determining he was unfit to drive. Instead of complying, though, Newsom threw that car into reverse, dragging the lieutenant across the street. The officer had back injuries and bruises, but fortunately survived the ordeal. But this wasn't the end of the rampage. Just 90 minutes later, he would break into a home in Far Rockaway, Queens, where his girlfriend and her mother lived. During the invasion, he terrorized a 66-year-old woman and her son before fleeing in a stolen green Jaguar S-Type sedan. Newson's spree would finally come to an end when the officers tracked him to his father's home in Suffolk County, Long Island. He was arrested and hit with multiple charges, including assaulting a police officer. The incident drew sharp criticism from the community and law enforcement alike, as Newson had been released without bail just days earlier on an attempted murder charge. Police union leaders and officials condemned the decision, highlighting flaws in the bail system that allowed such a violent offender to walk free. They called it a chilling example of the system failing those it's meant to protect. April 29, 2024. Officers from a multi-agency task force arrive at a quiet Charlotte neighborhood in North Carolina to serve an arrest warrant for 39-year-old Terry Clark Hughes Jr., a convicted felon wanted for firearm possession and eluding law enforcement. It was supposed to be another standard operation, but it became one of the deadliest attacks on U.S. law enforcement since 2016. As officers called for Hughes to come out, gunfire suddenly erupted from an upstairs window. Armed with an AR-15 rifle, Hughes unleashes over 100 rounds, many piercing the officer's body armor. With no cover, cops scrambled to protect themselves. The gunfire claimed the lives of Deputy U.S. Marshal Thomas Weeks, North Carolina officers Sam Peloche and William Elliott, and Charlotte Mecklenburg officer Joshua Ayer, who had been named Officer of the Month just weeks earlier. The standoff went on for 3 hours. Armored vehicles smashed into the house to evacuate the injured, while officers returned fire. Hughes was eventually shot and killed as he tried to escape through a window. The tragedy left a deep scar on this community. President Biden came out calling the fallen officers heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice. As for neighbors, they were left shaken, struggling to process the violence in their usual peaceful neighborhood. As one longtime resident said, "You raise your children here, and then suddenly this tragedy." It's 2017. Leaked bodycam footage captures a chilling ambush on Mexican police officers in Chihuahua. While on patrol, gunfire erupts suddenly, leaving officers scrambling to respond, and the video would show bullets pouring into the vehicle as gunmen believed to be members of the Juarez cartel opened fire. Despite being caught off guard, officers quickly regained control, firing back with assault rifles and holding their ground until the attackers retreated. These encounters are unfortunately pretty common in Mexico, where violence often pushes law enforcement to their limits. They have to constantly be prepared to outmatch the cartels in both skill and determination, something this next incident shows all too well. It's May 2015. Mexican authorities are taking a major stand against the CJNG in a deadly shootout in Michoacan. By the end of a 3-hour gun battle, 42 cartel members were dead, 3 in custody, and a significant blow had been dealt to one of Mexico's most dangerous syndicates. The clash began when Marines, federal police, and state authorities raided a large property suspected of housing armed cartel members. And as the officers approached, gunfire erupted, sparking this intense fight. And despite being outnumbered, the officers fought back, holding their ground, and eventually gaining control of the site. When it was all over, authorities uncovered an arsenal of 36 heavy weapons, including assault rifles, a grenade launcher, and stockpiles of ammunition. But the victory came at a cost. One federal police officer lost his life during the operation. Now, this next one also dealt a major blow to one of Mexico's most notorious cartels, the Sinaloa cartel, and its infamous leader, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. El Chapo's life feels like a Hollywood script. The man had escaped not one but 2 of Mexico's most secure prisons. But on January 8, 2016, his luck finally ran out. After this intense raid in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, Mexican Marines capture him for the 3rd and final time. The operation was Black Swan, and it began with a tip-off about his location. Bodycam footage released by the Mexican government shows Marines storming the house in a scene that could rival an action movie. Grenades exploding, bullets flying, and every corner searched. Sadly, during the mayhem, 5 Marines had lost their lives, and El Chapo nearly escaped once again, slipping through this hidden passageway. However, the freedom was short-lived. Hours later, federal police captured him on the highway, finally bringing his reign of terror to an end. January 19, 2017, El Chapo was extradited to the U.S., where he was then placed at ADX Florence, the supermax security prison in Colorado we love talking about, known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. This prison is one of the most secure in the world, ensuring that El Chapo will never escape again. The saying "like father, like son" couldn't be more fitting for Ovidio Guzman Lopez, son of El Chapo, because after his father's extradition to the U.S., him and his brothers were quickly taking over that Sinaloa cartel, running the distribution networks with the same ruthless methods as their father. Their actions earned him a spot on the most wanted lists of both Mexican and American authorities. By January 5, 2023, Mexican authorities finally tracked Ovidio down in the Jesus Maria district of Culiacan. Now, the night before, he was at a family party, but by dawn, military forces would storm in with choppers and ground vehicles. And finally, after a 10-hour standoff, they captured him. But his arrest caused all hell to break loose. Gunfights, roadblocks, and fires erupted all across Culiacan, Los Mochis, and Guasave. Looting also massively broke out, forcing businesses and banks to shut down. Videos on social media captured the panic at Culiacan's airport, where gunmen shot at 2 planes, causing the whole airport to shut down. And by the end of the rampage, the violence had claimed the lives of 10 soldiers, 19 gang members, and 1 police officer. But Mexican authorities stood firm under pressure, ensuring Ovidio remained in custody. On September 15, 2023, Ovidio was extradited to the U.S. on drug trafficking charges. He has since pled not guilty and is awaiting sentencing at the MCC in Chicago. If convicted, hey, he can go maybe spend some time with his dad at that supermax prison. Drug busts are pretty common. Sometimes it's a vehicle full of drugs on the move. Other times, it's a crack house where the operation's based. But it's rare to hear about the same house being busted over and over again. That's exactly the case with one house in Dallas, a place so infamous it's been raided 9 times. Yeah, 9. Dallas police know this place like the back of their hands. It's a known hotspot for drug activity. Neighbors don't even wait to see what's going on anymore. The moment someone new moves in, they're on the phone with narcotics officers, convinced it's happening again. And with a history like that, it's no surprise the house is always under watch. The most recent raid in 2022 was a textbook operation.
Get it open! Come on, let's hook up! Police! A little farther, bro. A little more.
Police surround the house, sealing off every escape route. The front and back doors were ripped off, windows shattered, and officers moved in like they'd done it 100 times. Like 8 times to be exact. The suspects didn't stand a chance. As officers stormed in the front, 3 suspects ran for the back, right into the arms of waiting police. For now, the 3 suspects are behind bars. But it's hard not to wonder, what is it about this house that keeps pulling them back? We have another drug bust, but this time, it takes place in the ocean. Let's go to June 18th, 2019. The U.S. Coast Guard released intense body cam footage of a daring ocean raid. The target? A semi-submersible narco sub carrying over 17,000 pounds of cocaine.
Alto su barco ahora! Alto su barco! Alto su barco! Alto su barco ahora!
The video shows the Coast Guard shouting at the fast-moving vehicle, ordering it to stop. When the narco sub refused to comply, the Coast Guard sprang into action. They boarded the semi-sub and forced open the hatch, finding 5 alleged smugglers inside. The suspects were then detained and handed over to the DEA for prosecution. Now, despite the success of this raid, the Coast Guard actually intercepts only about 11% of these drug-filled semi-subs. Central and South American cartels have increasingly relied on these vessels, which are pretty hard to spot without prior intelligence or some aerial surveillance. One Coast Guard member explained why these vessels are so elusive.
They blend in. Most of the vessels underwater, making it hard to spot. They're also painted blue to match the water.
Even when spotted, intercepting them is a race against time. The vessels are designed to sink and destroy evidence quickly, and smugglers are often armed and ready for confrontation. It's January 10th, 2020. Maria Guadalupe Lopez Esquivel, infamously known as La Catrina, hitwoman for the CJ&G, met her end during a raid by Mexican authorities. She was trapped in a safe house with other cartel members, and her final moments were captured on body cam footage. As police stormed the hideout, she was seen on the ground, bleeding and gasping for air, her face and clothes soaked in blood. And in this haunting moment, she reached toward the camera as an officer tried to reassure her.
Tranquila, mija, ya viene el helicóptero por ti. Ya viene el helicóptero. Tranquila, hija, tranquila. Vas a estar bien. Trata de aguantar, ¿eh?
Meanwhile, CJ&G attempted to delay authorities by blocking roads, forcing the military to call in a chopper to evacuate her. In another video, a soldier is seen carefully carrying her to the waiting helicopter. Despite the efforts to save her, La Catrina passed away shortly after that chopper took off. Her death marked the end of a brief but violent reign as one of the cartel's rising enforcers. At just 21, her story became a haunting reminder of the young lives consumed by cartel violence. February 24th, 2023, what seemed like a routine drug bust in Atlanta quickly turned into this high-stakes arrest of a homicide suspect. The scene unfolded near 215 Forsyth Street in southwest Atlanta, where officers spotted 2 men involved in suspicious narcotics activity. As police approached, one of the men panicked and threw some crack cocaine on the ground in plain view.
Don't move. Damn, get on the ground. On the ground, both of you. Yeah, get on the ground. I see that crack right there.
Both men were detained, and a search revealed that they were indeed carrying crack cocaine and marijuana. During the arrest, officers discovered a firearm one of the suspects had tried to discard.
Stop moving. Man, tell me before you know me, man. Get that shit out.
But the real twist comes when the 2 officers identified the 2 men. One had an outstanding warrant for homicide in another jurisdiction. Both would have warrants for narcotics violations, and the other was wanted for burglary. Additionally, the cops found car keys, crowbars, and tools they believe were for intended future burglaries. The 2 men were taken into custody and transported to jail. While the details of the homicide warrant or the specific jurisdiction weren't disclosed, the arrest underscores how routine operations can just sometimes reveal much larger criminal activity. It's January 30th, 2023. Atlanta police are called to a convenience store on Atlanta Avenue in Georgia to investigate a report of a dispute involving a weapon. During their response, officers ended up arresting a 17-year-old gang member who was carrying a stolen fully automatic firearm. When the officers got to the scene, they encountered Tavon Shelton, who aggressively shoved one of the officers. That action led to Shelton being detained.
What's wrong with you, man?
Nah, good, bro.
What are you shoving me like that for, man?
Nah, man, I'm just trying to walk
You
home.
want to see me
bro.
walking in the store, bro?
My bad.
During the search, officers found some alarming items: a magazine loaded with 16 rounds, a black face mask, a glass puncher, and a firearm that had been illegally modified to fire fully automatic. They later discovered the weapon had been reported stolen from Sandy Springs.
You're done, boy.
Police also identified Shelton as a known gang member with an outstanding warrant in DeKalb County for failure to appear on a robbery charge. Once in custody, Shelton faced multiple charges, including unlawful possession of an automatic weapon, theft by receiving and possession of tools for committing a crime. Now, this incident also involved a young gang member, but it ended in a far more tragic way. It's April 29, 2023, around 1 p.m. Merced County Sheriff deputies received reports of armed gang members near Winton Cemetery in California. Responding to the call, Deputy Nasir Wali spotted several individuals fleeing the cemetery and jumping into a car. When the suspects refused to stop, a high-speed chase began. Deputy Lucy Lopez joins the pursuit, which lasted nearly 4 minutes before the suspects crashed into a parked car at the corner of Walnut Avenue and Suzie Street. Now, things quickly turned more hectic as multiple people bolted from the vehicle, with deputies chasing after him and ordering him to stop.
Hey, stop! Stop now! Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands!
One of the suspects, Jonathan Daniel Diaz-Duarte, ran into a nearby apartment complex carrying what appeared to be an AR-15 rifle. As deputies closed in, Diaz-Duarte tripped and fell in an empty parking lot. But instead of surrendering, he turned and fired, striking Deputy Lopez in the ear. Lopez returned fire, hitting Diaz-Duarte 3 times. Despite the medic's efforts, he was pronounced dead at the scene.
There's still 5 shots fired. You good?
Diaz-Duarte's family later revealed that he had been released from Juvie Hall and removed his ankle monitor just 1 day before. September 19, 2024, a routine stop at a car wash turns deadly for 36-year-old Jabrell Conley. At around 5 p.m., officers from the New Haven Police Department's Violent Crime Task Force, armed with an arrest warrant for Conley on the Federal Hobbs Act robbery and firearm charges, tracked him to Splash Car Wash in West Haven, Connecticut. Conley was standing next to his black Hyundai Tucson when the task force moved in, attempting to block his vehicle. Realizing what was happening, Conley jumped in the car. Moments later, the driver's side window shattered with a gunshot. Officers respond immediately with 3 of them: Sergeant Colin Richter, Sergeant Francisco Sanchez, and Officer Michael Valente, opening fire. Conley was hit multiple times and collapsed onto the parking lot. Even after officers administered first aid, Conley was pronounced dead at Yale New Haven Hospital. A handgun with a high-capacity mag was recovered near him, and investigators found it had jammed after firing 1 round. Conley was no stranger to law enforcement, a known associate of the Grape Street Crips. He had previously served 5 years in federal prison for drug charges. Now, his ties to gang violence kept him under constant watch, and the path he chose, marked by a history of crime, ultimately led to his tragic end. August 30th, 2024, a routine traffic stop quickly turns into a deadly shootout, highlighting the dangers law enforcement face daily. Brevard County Sheriff's deputies pulled over a car in West Melbourne, Florida, with 3 adults and a baby inside. And as they chatted with 2 of the passengers, they asked the third, later identified as 38-year-old Paris Wilder, to step out of the vehicle. Then everything went haywire. Wilder leaped out of the back seat with a rifle and began firing. Deputies scrambled for cover, one of them taking a bullet to the leg. In this chaos, Wilder slipped behind the patrol vehicle, unnoticed. When the rifle jammed, he used it as a weapon, repeatedly bashing one deputy in the skull. The other deputy quickly reloaded and opened fire, fatally shooting Wilder at close range. The scene was terrifying, with more than 61 shots being fired in under a minute. Wilder, a career offender with 40 prior arrests and 2 active felony warrants, was killed at the scene. Following the incident, Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey had strong words about Wilder's violent history, saying,
"Let there be no doubt, this individual got exactly what he deserved. And to those out there who might be foolish enough to ask why we shot him so many times, that answer is simple. Because evil can never be dead enough."
May 17th, 2020, in Pasco, Washington, an intense confrontation unfolded between police and 2 homicide suspects, Juan and Miguel Montalvo. Both men were wanted for the murder of 29-year-old Luis Alexander Contreras, a crime committed 2 weeks earlier.
I'm going to need as many units as we have to head to North 12th, and we need to lock this thing down. We have confirmation that both homicide suspects are inside that residence.
The cousins had returned to the same home on E. Lewis Street where the murder occurred, breaking in and opening fire on the occupants. 2 people were seriously injured before the suspects fled, stealing a car at gunpoint and locking the owner in the trunk. Fortunately, the victim escaped and alerted the police, giving him a crucial lead. Detectives tracked the Montalvos to a home at Northwest 12th Street and set up surveillance. As officers surround the property, the suspects try to escape through the alley, each armed with a handgun. Detective Joshua Glass and Officer Eric Fox ordered them to surrender, but instead the Montalvos opened fire. The cops fired back, hitting both suspects, killing one and critically wounding the other.
Suspect's down, one's still firing. Stop moving! Show me your hand!
With the scene secured, officers provided first aid before paramedics transported the surviving suspect to the hospital. He was later booked into jail on murder charges. Meanwhile, the officers escaped the shootout without injury. It's June 5th, 2019. A traffic stop in Boyle Heights takes a sudden turn. Around 4:50 p.m., LAPD gang enforcement officers stopped a car on North Myers Street. But before they could finish, one of the passengers, 27-year-old Jose Abel Iribe, jumped out and took off running, setting the stage for an intense foot chase. Bodycam shows Iribe running and tossing a handgun that bounced off a green shipping container before hitting the ground. As officers close in, Iribe made a move to grab the gun. In that critical moment, one officer fired, hitting him in the leg. Bleeding and struggling, Iribe backed toward the officers, saying,
"I'm bleeding. My leg's messed up."
Despite multiple orders to get on the ground, he claimed he couldn't comply due to the pain. After repeated warnings, an officer used the taser to bring him down, and then he was handcuffed.
On the ground! Get on the ground! Get on the ground or you're gonna get tased!
But it didn't end there. The suspect, 27-year-old
Iribe, a known gang member with a criminal history that included domestic violence, survived his injuries. After his recovery, he faced multiple charges, including being a felon in possession of a firearm and assault with a deadly weapon. It's May 13th, 2023. Police in Columbus, Ohio responded to a violent gang fight in the Short North District. When officers got to North High Street, they were thrown into sheer chaos. Gunfire echoed throughout the streets as panicked people ran for cover. Without hesitation, the cops returned fire as bullets were flying their way. Bodycam caught the intensity of this 9-minute ordeal, with officers breaking up fights, shouting at suspects to drop their weapons, and trying to restore order. By the time the dust settled, 10 people had been shot and 1 tragically lost their life. Amid the chaos, police had arrested multiple suspects and seized 11 firearms. One of those arrested, a 20-year-old man, was hospitalized in critical condition but later stabilized. Investigators later showed that at least 2 more individuals were injured by officer gunfire. And following that hectic night, Brian Steele, a seasoned officer and union leader, said,
"This was one of the most chaotic scenes I've ever been a part of.